Racist cops arrest black pregnant woman veteran. 20 minutes later, FBI agent storms the station. She placed both hands protectively over her growing belly as the handcuffs clicked into place, her Bronze Star Medal barely visible beneath her jacket. And in that moment, Detective James Rivera realized he was about to witness something that would either destroy his career or save his soul. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comment where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow, I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the Veterans Affairs Clinic in Atlanta as Sergeant Maya Washington, 7 months pregnant, adjusted her maternity uniform and checked her phone one more time. The drive to Birmingham for her husband's job interview would take 3 hours. Plenty of time to make it there and back before her evening shift at the VA hospital. She traced the outline of her Bronze Star Medal through her jacket fabric, a habit that calmed her nerves. "Everything looks perfect, Sergeant Washington," Dr. Patricia Chen smiled, reviewing the ultrasound images. "Baby's healthy, strong heartbeat. Any concerns about the drive today?" Maya shook her head, though her lower back ached already. "Just supporting my husband. Marcus has an interview with the civil engineering firm downtown Birmingham. We're hoping to relocate closer to his family." What do you think Maya should be most worried about during her trip? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, 180 miles southeast in Birmingham, Alabama, Detective James Rivera sat in the precinct briefing room, staring at the assignment board with growing unease. Captain Bradley "Bull" Morrison stood at the front, his thick Alabama drawl filling the room like molasses. "Gentlemen, we got ourselves into a situation brewing downtown. City council's breathing down our necks about the veteran protests near the courthouse. They want a strong presence, zero tolerance for any disruptions." Morrison's eyes swept the room, lingering on Rivera. "Rivera, you'll partner with Officers Kowalski and Turner for patrol duty on 5th Avenue North." Rivera's stomach tightened. Kowalski and Turner, 2 officers with more excessive force complaints than commendations between them. He'd requested a different assignment 3 times this month. "Captain, I was hoping to work on domestic violence cases today. The Henderson file needs." "The Henderson file can wait." Morrison's voice carried an edge that made several officers shift in their seats. "This is about maintaining order, Detective. Something you seem to forget lately." The implicit threat hung in the air like Birmingham's industrial smog. Rivera had been walking a tightrope for months, trying to do good police work while avoiding confrontation with the department's old guard. His Puerto Rican heritage already made him an outsider. His college education and reluctance to use excessive force made him suspect. As the briefing dispersed, Officer Dan Kowalski clapped Rivera on the shoulder with false camaraderie. "Come on, college boy. Time to do some real police work." At 10:47 a.m., Maya merged onto I-20 West, her Honda Civic's air conditioning fighting against the Alabama heat. She'd made this drive dozens of times during Marcus's job search, but today felt different. The baby was more active than usual, pressing against her ribs as if sensing her tension. Her phone buzzed. Marcus texting from the engineering firm's lobby. The interview moved up to 11:30. "Sorry, babe, traffic was lighter than expected." Maya smiled and voice texted back while stopped at a red light in downtown Birmingham. "No problem. I'll grab lunch at that place near Railroad Park and wait for you." She didn't notice the patrol car that had been following her since the interstate exit, or the way Officer Kowalski's eyes narrowed when he saw her military bearing and deliberate movements. "Run the plates," Kowalski muttered to Turner. "Nothing comes back dirty, Turner replied after checking his computer. "Run them again." Rivera, riding in the passenger seat of the second patrol car, felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten. He'd seen this dance before. Good cops following procedure, bad cops looking for excuses. Maya parked near the courthouse district, fed the meter, and began walking toward the restaurant Marcus had recommended. Her military training kicked in automatically. Scanning surroundings, noting exits, maintaining situational awareness. Years of deployment in Afghanistan had made these habits second nature. But nothing in Kandahar had prepared her for the particular danger of being a pregnant black woman in the wrong place at the wrong time in Birmingham, Alabama. The radio crackled in Rivera's car. Suspicious individual walking near the courthouse. Possible vagrant or protester. Rivera looked up to see Maya walking calmly down the sidewalk, one hand supporting her lower back, the other holding her purse. She wore a clean maternity top, comfortable shoes, and moved with the precise posture of someone who'd served their country. "That's not a vagrant," Rivera said quietly to his partner, Officer Thompson. But Kowalski and Turner were already pulling over. The moment Officer Dan Kowalski stepped out of his patrol car, Maya Washington knew she was in trouble. 23 years of life as a black woman, plus 4 tours in Afghanistan, had given her a radar for dangerous men who wore authority like a weapon. "Excuse me, ma'am." Kowalski's voice carried the false politeness that preceded violence. "I need to see some identification." Maya stopped walking, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing the shift in her body chemistry. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Just routine. ID, please." From 30 feet away, Detective Rivera watched the interaction unfold with growing dread. Maya stood perfectly still, her posture military straight despite her pregnancy. Every movement was controlled, respectful, the behavior of someone who knew exactly how dangerous this moment had become. "I'm just walking to lunch, officer. My husband has a job interview nearby." Maya's voice remained steady as she reached slowly into her purse, narrating each movement. "I'm reaching for my wallet now. Georgia driver's license." Turner positioned himself behind Maya while Kowalski examined her ID with theatrical suspicion. "Georgia, huh? Long way from home. What brings you to Birmingham?" "Like I said, my husband's job interview. With Morrison Engineering Group." Maya kept her answers short, professional. Every word is carefully chosen. Morrison Engineering. Kowalski exchanged a glance with Turner. "Funny thing, we got reports of suspicious activity in this area. People causing problems near the courthouse." "I'm just going to lunch, officer." Rivera felt his partner Thompson tense beside him in their patrol car. "This is going sideways fast," Thompson muttered. The radio crackled, "All units, be advised, veteran protest planned for courthouse steps today. Extra vigilance required." Maya's eyes flashed with recognition and anger. "I am a veteran, officer. Served 4 tours in Afghanistan with the 101st Airborne. I have every right to be here." The words hung in the air like a lit match near gasoline. Kowalski's face hardened. "Turner, call for backup. We got ourselves an agitator." "I'm not agitating anything." Maya's voice rose slightly, then she caught herself, forcing calm back into her tone. "I'm 7 months pregnant. I just want to have lunch and wait for my husband." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to place your hands behind your back." The world seemed to slow down. Maya's military training warred with her civilian reality. Part of her wanted to resist, to demand her rights, to fight back against the injustice. But the other part, the part that had seen too many traffic stops go wrong, the part that was carrying precious cargo, whispered, "Survive this moment. Officer, please. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm pregnant. Hands behind your back. Now." Rivera couldn't stay in the car anymore. He stepped out, his hand unconsciously moving to his radio. "Kowalski, what's the charge here?" "Suspicious activity. Failure to comply. Take your pick, college boy." Maya's hands shook as she placed them behind her back. The handcuffs were too tight, designed for men, not pregnant women. The metal bit into her wrists as Turner roughly adjusted them. "Please," she whispered, and for the first time, her military composure cracked. "My baby." Have you ever witnessed an injustice and struggled with whether to intervene? What would you do in Detective Rivera's position? Share your thoughts below. Rivera watched Maya's face transform from controlled fear to something deeper, a recognition that she was completely powerless in this moment. It was a look he'd seen before, in his own mother's eyes during their raids when he was a child in Puerto Rico. The look of someone who understood that justice wasn't blind. It was looking right at you and choosing to see something else. "What's your badge number?" Maya asked quietly, her voice steady again despite the tears now streaming down her cheeks. "What did you say to me?" Kowalski stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "I asked for your badge number. It's my right." The slap came fast and sharp, snapping Maya's head to the side. Several pedestrians stopped and stared. One began recording with her phone. "Officer Kowalski." Rivera's voice cut across the scene like a whip crack. Thompson grabbed Rivera's arm. "Don't do it, man. Don't throw your career away." But Rivera was already moving. In that instant, watching a pregnant veteran get slapped for asking for a badge number, something fundamental shifted inside him. All the compromises, all the times he'd stayed silent, all the reports he'd filed knowing they'd disappear into desk drawers, it all crystallized into this single moment. Maya tasted blood where her lip had split. The baby was moving frantically now, responding to her elevated heart rate and stress hormones. She closed her eyes and thought of Marcus, probably sitting in a conference room right now, talking about structural integrity and load-bearing calculations, having no idea his wife was being brutalized 6 blocks away. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rivera approached slowly, his hands visible. Maya opened her eyes and studied this new officer. Younger, different energy. Puerto Rican, maybe. Something in his face that looked like recognition, like understanding. "Detective James Rivera," he said quietly, showing her his badge. "Badge number 4425. The simple act of giving his name and number voluntarily, treating her like a human being deserving of basic courtesy, nearly broke Maya's composure completely. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. Kowalski's radio squawked, "Unit 23, what's your status?" "We're bringing in a suspect for questioning. Disturbing the peace, resisting arrest." Rivera's jaw clenched. He pulled out his own phone and began recording, making sure Kowalski could see what he was doing. "Detective," Turner warned, "you might want to think about your next move real carefully." Rivera looked at Maya, really looked at her. 7 months pregnant, Bronze Star recipient, sitting in the back of a police cruiser because she'd had the audacity to exist while black in downtown Birmingham. Her hands cuffed behind her back, blood on her lip, dignity intact despite everything. He made his choice. "I'm riding with you to the station," Rivera told Kowalski. "As a witness." Witness to what? Rivera met his eyes steadily. "To make sure nothing else happens to Sergeant Washington." The use of her military rank hung in the air like a challenge. Maya looked up sharply. Nobody had called her sergeant since she'd left active duty. As they drove toward the Birmingham Police Department Central Precinct, Maya closed her eyes and began what she'd learned to do during the worst moments in Afghanistan. She started counting. Counting her breaths, counting the baby's kicks, counting the minutes until this nightmare would be over. She had no way of knowing that her arrest had already triggered a series of phone calls that would bring the full weight of the federal government down on this small Alabama police station in exactly 18 minutes. The fluorescent lights in the Birmingham police station's booking area buzzed with the persistence of angry wasps as Maya Washington sat rigidly in the plastic chair, her wrists still bearing red marks from the handcuffs. She kept both hands protectively over her belly, feeling the baby's agitated movements mirror her own racing heartbeat. "Name," barked Desk Sergeant Williams, not looking up from his paperwork. "Sergeant Maya Washington, United States Army." Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being heard and obeyed. Williams's pen stopped moving. He glanced up, taking in her military bearing despite her obvious pregnancy and disheveled appearance from the arrest. "Army, huh? What unit?" 82nd Airborne Division, 1st Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Maya's chin lifted slightly. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Bronze Star recipient. The booking area fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Even Officer Kowalski, who had been lounging against the wall with smug satisfaction, straightened slightly. Detective James Rivera stood in the doorway, having followed the arrest procession back to the station. He watched Maya's interaction with Williams, noting how her military credentials seemed to create a crack in the officer's united front of casual indifference. "Says here you were disturbing the peace near the courthouse," Williams continued, but his tone had shifted from dismissive to uncertain. "I was walking to meet my husband for lunch," Maya replied evenly. "He had a job interview with Morrison Engineering. I was 7 blocks from the courthouse when your officers approached me." Rivera's blood chilled. Morrison Engineering, the same company that donated heavily to Captain Morrison's political campaigns. The same company where the captain's brother-in-law served as regional director. Kowalski pushed off from the wall, his face flushing red. "She was casing the building, Sarge. Moving real suspicious-like, checking exits, taking notes on her phone." "I was texting my husband about lunch plans," Maya said, her voice remaining steady despite the tremor Rivera could detect underneath. "And yes, I maintain situational awareness. It's called military training." "Military training, my ass," Turner chimed in from across the room. "Probably learned to make bombs over there. Brought that terrorist shit back home." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Maya's composure cracked for just an instant, a flash of pain and rage that made Rivera's chest tighten. He'd seen that look before, in his sister's eyes when kids at school called her family dirty spics after they'd moved to Alabama from Puerto Rico. "That's enough," Rivera found himself saying, stepping fully into the booking area. All eyes turned to him. Kowalski's expression shifted from smug to suspicious. "Something wrong, detective? Thought you were on our side." "I'm on the side of proper procedure," Rivera replied carefully. "Sergeant Washington, have you been read your rights?" "Yes." "And you understand you have the right to an attorney?" Maya's dark eyes met his, and Rivera saw intelligence there, along with a careful evaluation. She was measuring him, trying to determine if he was friend or foe in a room full of unclear allegiances. "I understand my rights perfectly, Detective." "Rivera. Detective James Rivera." He paused, aware that every word was being weighed by hostile ears. "I'd like to review the arrest report." Kowalski's hand moved instinctively to his gun belt. "Since when do detectives review traffic stops, Rivera?" "Since pregnant veterans get arrested for walking while black," Rivera said quietly. The temperature in the room plummeted. Sergeant Williams looked between the officers like a referee watching a fight about to break out. Turner's face went pale, then red. "You got a problem with how we do police work?" Turner demanded. Rivera felt the crossroads approaching, the moment his father had warned him about when he joined the force 5 years ago. "Son," his father had said, "there's going to come a day when you have to choose between being a good cop and being a safe cop. Choose carefully." Maya watched the tension escalate around her, her military mind automatically cataloging exits and potential allies. Detective Rivera had kind eyes, unusual in this room full of barely contained hostility. But kindness could be a luxury he couldn't afford to show her. "I'd like to make my phone call now," she said, cutting through the mounting tension. "Phone's broken," Kowalski lied smoothly. Rivera pulled out his cell phone. "Use mine." The gesture was small, but in the charged atmosphere of the booking area, it might as well have been a declaration of war. Kowalski and Turner exchanged glances that Rivera recognized from his childhood, the look bullies shared before they cornered their victim. Maya accepted the phone with steady hands, though Rivera noticed the slight tremor in her fingers. She dialed from memory, waited through 3 rings, then spoke in a voice that carried across the room with crystalline clarity. "Colonel Patterson, this is Sergeant Washington. I'm being held at Birmingham PD downtown precinct on what appears to be a fabricated charge." "Yes, sir. I'm pregnant and uninjured, but I need immediate legal representation." Rivera saw the exact moment when everyone in the room realized Maya Washington wasn't just any pregnant veteran. She had connections that reached far beyond Birmingham city limits. "Yes, sir, I'll hold," Maya continued, then covered the phone's mouthpiece. "Detective Rivera, Colonel Patterson would like to speak with the arresting officer's supervisor." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down in the town square. Rivera looked at Kowalski and Turner, whose confidence was rapidly evaporating as the implication sank in. Military justice moved faster and with more precision than civilian complaints. If Sergeant Maya Washington had been wrongfully arrested, there would be federal inquiries, media attention, and the kind of scrutiny that could end careers and close precincts. Rivera took the phone, his decision crystallizing with perfect, terrifying clarity. "This is Detective James Rivera. I'll connect you with Captain Morrison immediately." As he walked toward the captain's office, Maya's voice followed him. "Detective Rivera?" He turned back. "Thank you." 2 simple words that felt like absolution and damnation rolled into one. The baby kicked hard against Maya's ribs, and she whispered softly, "Hold on, little one. Mama's about to shake things up." In 17 minutes, federal agents would storm through the precinct doors. But none of them knew that yet. The holding cell smelled of disinfectant and despair. Maya sat on the narrow bench, her hands protectively cradling her belly as the baby kicked restlessly inside her. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows that made the concrete walls feel even more oppressive. Through the reinforced glass window of her cell door, she could see Detective Rivera pacing in the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear. For the past hour he'd been making calls, first to his supervisor, then to internal affairs, and now to someone whose conversation was growing increasingly heated. "I don't care what Captain Morrison says," Rivera's voice carried through the thin walls. "This woman is 7 months pregnant, a decorated veteran, and we have zero probable cause. Zero. Maya watched him with cautious curiosity. In her 8 years of military service, she'd learned to read people quickly. Their body language, their tells, their motivations. This detective was different from Kowalski and Turner. Where they moved with the swagger of bullies, Rivera carried himself with the weight of someone fighting an internal war. Officer Sarah Martinez, the department's only female patrol officer, approached Maya's cell with a cup of water and a packet of crackers. "I'm sorry about this," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the main desk where Kowalski sat filling out paperwork. "Detective Rivera asked me to bring you these." "Thank you." Maya accepted the water gratefully. "How long have I been here?" Martinez checked her watch. 2 hours and 17 minutes. "But Detective Rivera says." "Martinez." Captain Morrison's voice boomed across the station. "Get back to your desk. Now." The young officer scurried away, leaving Maya alone again with her thoughts and the growing pressure in her lower back. She closed her eyes and tried to center herself using techniques she'd learned during her deployment. Controlled breathing, mental compartmentalization, focusing on what she could control rather than what she couldn't. But the baby's increasingly agitated movements made it difficult to find calm. Rivera ended his call and approached her cell, his expression a mixture of frustration and determination. "Mrs. Washington, I know this is incredibly difficult, but I need you to know that help is coming." Maya studied his face through the glass. "What kind of help?" "I can't say much while we're being monitored, but your military record. It's remarkable. Bronze Star, 2 tours in Afghanistan, field medic training." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "People in high places are very interested in ensuring you're treated with the respect you've earned." "Detective Rivera." Morrison's voice cut through the station like a blade. "My office. Now." Rivera didn't move immediately. Instead, he maintained eye contact with Maya. "My partner Thompson is watching the monitors. If anything happens, if you feel any pain or distress, you call out." "Understood." Maya nodded, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. As Rivera walked toward Morrison's office, Maya noticed Thompson positioned strategically at the security desk, his eyes alternating between the monitor showing her cell and the heated conversation visible through Morrison's glass-walled office. Inside Morrison's office, Rivera stood at attention while the captain paced behind his desk like a caged animal. "You want to explain to me why I'm getting calls from downtown about this arrest?" Morrison's face was red with barely contained rage. "You want to tell me why some federal bureaucrat is asking questions about our procedures?" "Captain, we arrested a pregnant veteran without probable cause. Her military contacts are simply—" "Her military contacts?" Morrison slammed his hand on the desk. "Detective, you seem to forget who you work for. This department, this community, depends on officers who understand loyalty." Rivera felt the familiar weight of choosing between his conscience and his career, but Maya's face, dignified even in handcuffs, had shifted something fundamental inside him. "Sir, loyalty to what? To justice? Or to cover up mistakes?" Morrison's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You're walking a very thin line, Rivera. Very thin." Meanwhile, in a federal building across town, FBI Special Agent Carmen Valdez was reviewing a file that had landed on her desk 20 minutes after Maya's arrest. The call had come from Colonel Patricia Hayes at Fort Benning, Maya's former commanding officer and someone with significant influence in military federal law enforcement cooperation. "Agent Morrison, we have a problem," her partner, Agent David Kim, said as he entered the office with a printout. The Birmingham PD just arrested one of our military liaisons personnel. Valdez looked up from Maya's service record. Define our personnel. Sergeant Maya Washington. She worked as a liaison between military medical units and federal veteran services. She has security clearance for several ongoing federal investigations into veteran healthcare fraud. Kim placed the printout on her desk. Her arrest could compromise 3 active federal cases. And she's pregnant. 7 months. Valdez stood, her decision already made. How long will it take to get to Birmingham PD? 15 minutes if we blue light it. Back at the station, Rivera returned to find Maya doubled over on her cell bench, breathing heavily. Thompson was already unlocking her cell door. Mrs. Washington, what's wrong? Rivera knelt beside her. The baby, Maya gasped between contractions. Something's not right. The stress, the handcuffs cutting off circulation earlier. I need medical attention. Rivera didn't hesitate. Thompson, call an ambulance. Now. But Morrison said. I don't give a damn what Morrison said. Call the ambulance or I will. As Thompson reached for his radio, the station's front doors burst open. 2 figures in dark suits strode through the lobby with the kind of authority that made even veteran cops step aside. Special Agents Valdez and Kim, FBI, the woman announced, flashing her badge. We're here about Sergeant Maya Washington. Captain Morrison emerged from his office, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. Agents, I'm sure we can resolve whatever misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Captain. Agent Valdez's voice cut through the station like ice. You've arrested a federal liaison without probable cause, compromised active federal investigations, and endangered the health of a pregnant veteran. Rivera helped Maya to her feet as the ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. For the first time in hours, he saw hope flicker in her eyes. Ma'am, Rivera said to Agent Valdez, she needs immediate medical attention. Valdez nodded to her partner, who immediately began coordinating with the approaching EMTs. Sergeant Washington, I'm Agent Valdez. Colonel Hayes sends her regards and her assurance that this situation is about to be resolved. Maya's relief was visible, but Rivera could see she was still struggling with pain. As the EMTs entered the station, he found himself caught between 2 worlds, the corrupt system he'd been part of and the justice he'd always believed police work should represent. The ambulance lights painted the station walls in alternating red and blue, and Rivera realized that in the span of one afternoon, everything he thought he knew about his job, his colleagues, and himself was about to change forever. Agent Valdez turned to Morrison with the kind of smile that promised consequences. Captain, we need to have a very serious conversation about federal obstruction charges. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Rivera sat across from Maya in the cramped interrogation room, a manila folder thick with military records spread between them. Captain Morrison had left 20 minutes ago, muttering about federal overreach and bleeding heart liberals, but not before shooting Rivera a look that promised consequences. Maya's hands rested protectively over her belly, her breathing measured despite the obvious discomfort of the hard metal chair. The baby had been kicking more frequently since her arrest, as if sensing her elevated stress. Sergeant Washington, Rivera began softly, I need to understand what we're dealing with here. Your service record. He paused, studying the pages. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 3 tours in Afghanistan. Combat medic with the 101st Airborne. Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What does any of that matter now, detective? Your colleagues made it clear they don't care about my service when they threw me against their patrol car." Rivera leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Because in 15 minutes, FBI agents are going to walk through that door, and they're going to want answers about why a decorated veteran was treated like a terrorist on American soil." For the first time since her arrest, Maya's composure cracked slightly. Her fingers traced the edge of her Bronze Star medal through her jacket. "How do you know about your emergency contact, Master Sergeant Chen at Fort Benning? Apparently, you saved his life in Kandahar province." Rivera's eyes held hers steadily. "He made some calls when the booking sergeant ran your prints through the federal database." Maya closed her eyes, and suddenly she was back in the Afghan desert, the acrid smell of smoke and copper filling her nostrils. The IED had torn through their convoy like God's own anger, leaving Humvees twisted and burning under the merciless sun. She could still hear Chen's screams, still feel his blood soaking through her combat fatigues as she worked frantically to stop the arterial bleeding in his leg. "November 15, 2019, she said quietly. "Route Hawks, outside forward operating base Shank. Chen took shrapnel from an improvised explosive device. Severed femoral artery." Her voice grew clinical, detached. "I had maybe 3 minutes to get a tourniquet on him before he bled out." Rivera watched her face transform as she spoke, seeing the soldier beneath the pregnant civilian. "The report says you carried him half a mile to the extraction point while under enemy fire." Chen was 19 years old, had a girlfriend back in Ohio who sent him letters every week. Maya's hand moved to her belly again. "I couldn't let her get that phone call." A memory stirred in Rivera's chest, his own moment of choice, his own failure of courage. He'd been 12 years old, standing in his family's bodega in the South Bronx, watching 3 NYPD officers shove his father against the wall of refrigerated drinks. The arrest had been for suspicious behavior, which meant Eduardo Rivera had been brown and tired after working 2 shifts to support his family. "My father was a good man," Rivera said suddenly, surprising himself. "Came here from Puerto Rico with nothing but a work ethic and a dream. Built a small business, employing 6 people from the neighborhood." Maya studied his face, noting the tightness around his eyes. What happened to him? 3 cops decided he looked suspicious counting money in his own store. Roughed him up, arrested him for resisting arrest. Rivera's voice grew bitter. "I watched from behind the counter. 12 years old, and I watched good cops stand by while bad cops destroyed my father's dignity." The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding. Outside the interrogation room, they could hear raised voices in the hallway. Morrison arguing with someone about jurisdiction and federal interference. "You know what the worst part was?" Rivera continued. "Not the arrest, not even the false charges. It was seeing the defeat in my father's eyes afterward. Like he finally understood that no matter how hard he worked, how much he contributed, some people would always see him as less than human." Maya shifted uncomfortably as another contraction-like pain shot through her lower back. The baby was pressing against her ribcage now, seemingly agitated by her elevated heart rate. "Is that why you became a cop? To be different?" Rivera laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I thought I could change things from the inside. Clean up the department, protect people like my father." He gestured toward the door where they could still hear Morrison's angry voice. "Turns out the system has ways of dealing with idealists." "What kind of ways?" "Dead-end assignments. Bad performance reviews for not being a team player." complaints that disappear into filing cabinets. Rivera's hands clenched on the table. 3 months ago, I witnessed Officer Kowalski plant drugs on a teenager during a traffic stop. Kid was clean, just driving his grandmother to church. When I tried to report it, they buried it, Maya finished. Buried it and me along with it. Morrison made it clear that my career in Birmingham PD had an expiration date if I kept stirring up trouble. Maya studied his face, seeing something familiar in the set of his shoulders, the weight of carrying moral injury, of watching injustice and being powerless to stop it. She'd seen it in the mirror after returning from Afghanistan, after losing too many good soldiers to politics and bureaucracy. "You know what kept me going over there?" she asked. It wasn't patriotism or duty or any of the things they put in recruitment commercials. It was the knowledge that someone had to stand between innocent people and those who would harm them. Rivera nodded slowly. Even when the cost gets too high. Especially then. Maya's voice grew stronger. Because if good people don't stand up, if we let fear make us complicit, then we're not good people anymore. The voices in the hallway grew louder, and Rivera could make out Morrison's words. "I don't care what Washington says. This is my precinct, and I won't have federal agents." A new voice cut through Morrison's bluster, calm and authoritative. "Captain Morrison, I'm Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI Civil Rights Division. We need to talk." Maya and Rivera looked at each other across the table, both understanding that the moment of reckoning had arrived. In a few minutes, the interrogation room door would open, and Rivera would have to choose between the career he'd built and the principles he'd sworn to uphold. "Detective Rivera," Maya said quietly, "whatever happens next, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite the fear." Outside, Agent Mitchell's voice carried clearly through the thin walls. "We'll be conducting interviews with everyone involved in Sergeant Washington's arrest, starting with the arresting officers." Rivera stood up, straightening his shoulders in a gesture that unconsciously mirrored Maya's military bearing. For the first time in months, he knew exactly what he had to do. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Rivera slid a cup of lukewarm water through the cell bars to Maya. It was 2:30 a.m., and the station had grown quiet except for the distant sound of dispatch radios and the occasional drunk in processing. "Thank you," Maya said softly, accepting the cup. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting all day, but her eyes remained alert, watchful. Rivera had volunteered for the late shift, telling himself it was just to keep an eye on the situation. But the truth sat heavier in his chest. He couldn't leave her alone with officers like Kowalski still prowling the halls. "The FBI agents are coming back in the morning," he said, keeping his voice low. Agent Martinez seemed competent. Maya's hand moved to her belly as the baby kicked. "Competent enough to cut through Bull Morrison's lies, I hope." "You know about Morrison's reputation?" A bitter smile crossed Maya's lips. "Detective Rivera, I've served in 3 combat zones. I can smell corruption from a mile away." She studied his face in the harsh light. "The question is, why are you still here? Your shift ended hours ago." Rivera leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling the weight of his badge. "My daughter would be about your age if—" He stopped, surprised by his own words. If what? The silence stretched between them, filled only by the station's ambient noise. Rivera had never spoken about Sophia to anyone at work. Hell, he barely spoke about her at home. If she hadn't died in a car accident when she was 19. The words came out rough, like sandpaper against his throat. A drunk driver ran a red light in Phoenix. She was She was going to be a teacher. Maya's expression softened. I'm sorry. She used to call me when she got pulled over. 3 times in 2 years. Nothing serious, just teenage stuff. But she always called because she knew. He gestured around the station. She knew not all cops are the good guys. What did you tell her? To comply, stay calm, call me immediately. Rivera's laugh held no humor. Same thing every black parent tells their kids. Same thing I should have told you to do, except I was already doing everything right. Yeah. He met her eyes. You were doing everything right. Maya shifted uncomfortably, her back clearly aching from the metal bench. Without thinking, Rivera grabbed a folded blanket from the supply closet. Here. It's not much, but... Thank you. As she arranged the blanket behind her back, she winced. This little one's been restless all day. They know mommy's stressed. Boy or girl? We decided to wait and see. Maya's hand traced circles on her belly. My husband says he doesn't care, but I caught him looking at baseball gloves online last week. Where is he now? Hotel room, probably pacing holes in the carpet. I made him promise not to come to the station. With his temper. She shook her head. One of us in custody is enough. Rivera understood. He'd seen too many situations escalate when family members showed up demanding answers, especially when those family members looked like Marcus Washington. The job interview, how did it go? Maya's face brightened for the first time all day. Really well, actually. Before all this happened. The firm wants to offer him a position. We were supposed to celebrate tonight. You still can. Tomorrow when this is over. You really think it will be? Over, I mean. Rivera considered lying, offering false reassurance. Instead, he chose the truth. Agent Martinez has a reputation. She doesn't take cases she can't win. And what happened to you today? There's no justifying it. Even in Alabama, especially in Alabama, things are changing slowly. Not fast enough, but... He gestured toward the security cameras he'd made sure were recording everything. Your military record, the witnesses, the fact that Kowalski's been written up 4 times this year, it all matters. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Why are you helping me, Detective Rivera? Really? The question hung in the air like incense, demanding honesty. Rivera thought about his daughter, about all the times he'd stayed silent, about the career he'd built by not making waves. Because 18 months ago, I watched Officer Turner pepper spray a homeless veteran in Kelly Ingram Park. The man was just sleeping, and wasn't bothering anyone. And I didn't report it. The confession felt like swallowing broken glass. I told myself it wasn't my case, it wasn't my problem. But that night, I went home and looked at Sophia's picture, and I knew she'd be ashamed of me. Tears gathered in Maya's eyes. What was she like? Stubborn. Brilliant. She wanted to teach elementary school because she said little kids still believed they could change the world. Rivera's voice cracked slightly. She probably would have liked you. I would have liked her too. The baby kicked hard enough that Maya gasped, and instinctively, Rivera stepped closer to the bars. You okay? Just active. Probably responding to my stress hormones. She looked up at him. James, can I call you James? He nodded. Thank you. For staying. For seeing me as human. You don't know how much that means. You shouldn't have to thank anyone for basic decency. No, I shouldn't. But here we are. Rivera checked his watch. 3:15 a.m. In a few hours, Agent Martinez would return with federal warrants. Morrison would bluster and threaten. The media would arrive. This quiet moment of connection would shatter into chaos and consequences. But right now, in the fluorescent-lit quiet of the holding area, two people who'd been shaped by loss and duty sat together, finding unexpected understanding across the bars of institutional injustice. James. Maya's voice was softer now, vulnerable. Yeah. When this is over, when the baby comes, would you like to meet them? I think they should know there are good police officers in the world. Rivera felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that had been locked since Sophia died. I'd like that very much. Outside, Birmingham slept on, unaware that in a police station holding cell, justice and mercy were beginning to recognize each other, preparing for the battle that would come with dawn. The fluorescent lights in interview room C buzzed like angry wasps as Internal Affairs Lieutenant Sarah Hendricks slid a thick manila folder across the metal table toward Rivera. The timestamp on the security camera in the corner read 2:47 p.m. Exactly 6 hours since Maya's arrest had turned his world upside down. Detective Rivera, let's cut through the bullshit. Hendricks' voice carried the tired authority of someone who'd seen too many good cops go bad and bad cops get promoted. We have security footage of you interfering with a lawful arrest. We have testimony from 3 officers that you physically obstructed their duties. And we have a pregnant woman claiming you're some kind of hero. Rivera's hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Maya being shoved against the patrol car, her face contorted in pain as Kowalski's knee pressed into her back. Him stepping between Turner and Maya's prone form. The moment when everything changed. That woman is a decorated veteran carrying a child, Rivera said, his voice hoarse from hours of questioning. She was walking to lunch. That woman, Hendricks emphasized the words with practiced disdain, was in violation of the city's anti-loitering ordinance near a federal building during a period of heightened security. She was 7 months pregnant and walking to meet her husband. According to you. Hendricks leaned back, studying Rivera like a specimen under glass. But here's what's interesting, Detective. Captain Morrison says you've been exhibiting erratic behavior for months, questioning orders, showing disrespect to senior officers, making unauthorized contact with federal agents. Rivera's blood ran cold. They knew about his call to Maya's military contact, Agent Chen. They'd been watching him longer than he'd realized. James, Hendricks' voice softened into fake intimacy. You're a good cop who made some bad choices today. But it's not too late. We can make this go away. Transfer you to a nice desk job in property and evidence. Full pension still intact when you retire. The offer hung in the air like a noose disguised as a lifeline. All you have to do is sign a statement saying Mrs. Washington was combative and resisted arrest. Officers Kowalski and Turner followed proper protocol. That your intervention was misguided emotional response to a high-stress situation. Rivera stared at the prepared statement, the words blurring through his exhaustion. His signature would destroy Maya's credibility, validate the system's corruption, and preserve his comfortable life. My wife's pregnant too, he said suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. Hendricks raised an eyebrow. Congratulations. Due in December. A little girl. Rivera's voice cracked. I keep thinking, what if someday she's walking down a street, minding her own business, and some cops decide she looks suspicious? Your daughter will be fine, Detective. She'll have a father with a steady job and a clean record. Hendricks tapped the statement with her pen. Unless you want to throw all that away for some stranger who'll forget your name in a month. 3 doors down the hallway, Maya sat alone in a holding cell that smelled of disinfectant and broken dreams. Her wrists still bore red marks from the handcuffs, and every shift sent sharp pains through her lower back. The baby had been kicking frantically for hours, as if sensing her distress. She'd been allowed one phone call to Marcus, who was racing back from his interview in a panic. No word about charges. No word about Rivera. No word about when this nightmare would end. The cell door clanged open, and Captain Morrison stepped in, his bulk filling the narrow doorway. His smile was all teeth and malice. "Mrs. Washington, I hear you've been telling some interesting stories about my officers." Maya struggled to her feet, using the wall for support. "I've been telling the truth." "The truth?" Morrison chuckled, settling his considerable weight against the doorframe. "Let me tell you the truth, ma'am. The truth is you were walking in a restricted area during heightened security. The truth is you became combative when lawfully detained. The truth is Detective Rivera has a history of unstable behavior and personal problems. Detective Rivera prevented your officers from assaulting a pregnant woman. Detective Rivera interfered with a lawful arrest and is currently reconsidering his career choices." Morrison's smile widened. Funny how perspective changes when your pension's on the line. Maya felt something break inside her chest. Not her ribs, which still ached from Kowalski's knee, but something deeper. The fragile hope that Rivera's courage meant something. That standing up mattered. That the system could be different. "You people," she whispered, and immediately hated herself for the words. For letting them reduce her to anger instead of dignity. "Us people." Morrison stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Ma'am, I'd be very careful about the words you choose. You're already looking at charges for resisting arrest and disturbing the peace. Add in some inflammatory language about law enforcement, and we might have to discuss hate crime allegations." The baby kicked hard against Maya's ribs, and she gasped, doubling over slightly. "Oh, now that looks like a medical emergency." Morrison's voice dripped with false concern. "Shame if you had to deliver in county lockup because you couldn't afford bail." Back in interview room C, Rivera stared at the statement that would save his career and damn his soul. The pen felt impossibly heavy in his hand. "Tick-tock, detective." Hendricks checked her watch. "Federal agents or not, this decision gets made today. With you or without you." Rivera thought about his unborn daughter. About Maya's Bronze Star Medal. About all the times he'd stayed silent when he should have spoken up. He thought about the look in Maya's eyes when Kowalski shoved her against the car. Not fear, but disappointment. As if she'd expected better from the world she'd served. "I need to make a phone call," Rivera said quietly. "You can call your union rep after you sign the statement." "No." Rivera stood up, the chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "I need to call Agent Chen. Tell her exactly what I witnessed today." Hendricks' fake smile vanished. "Sit down, detective. You're making a mistake that will ruin your life." "My life was already ruined," Rivera replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. "I just didn't realize it until today." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Rivera walked toward the door, leaving the unsigned statement on the table like a rejected offering to corrupt gods. Behind him, Hendricks was already reaching for her radio, her voice sharp with authority. "Security to interview room C. We have a situation." The fluorescent lights in the Internal Affairs conference room buzzed like angry wasps as Detective James Rivera sat across from Captain Morrison and IA investigator Lieutenant Sarah Hayes. The manila folder between them contained his entire career. 15 years of service, commendations, complaints, and now, the report that would either end everything or set him free. "You understand what you're alleging here, Rivera?" Morrison's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "You're claiming that Officers Kowalski and Turner violated department policy, federal law, and basic human decency. That's a serious accusation." Rivera's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the water glass. Through the one-way mirror, he could see the bullpen where his colleagues worked, unaware that their world was about to shift. Maya's words echoed in his mind. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything, but doing nothing costs your soul." "I'm not alleging anything, Captain. I'm stating facts." Rivera opened his own copy of the report. At 11:23 a.m., Sergeant Maya Washington was approached without probable cause. At 11:25, she was subjected to excessive force despite full compliance. At 11:27, racial slurs were used during the arrest. "I have body cam footage, witness statements, and medical documentation of injuries sustained during custody." Lieutenant Hayes leaned forward, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "Detective Rivera, you've been with this department for 15 years. Captain Morrison speaks highly of your work. Why risk your career, your pension, your family security for someone you barely know?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Rivera thought about his daughter Sophia, starting college in the fall. His wife Carmen, who'd supported him through every difficult case, every long night, every moral compromise he'd made to survive in the system. His mortgage, his health insurance, his future. Then he thought about Maya's face when the handcuffs clicked into place. The way she'd protected her belly even as Kowalski shoved her against the car. The sound of her quiet dignity as she recited her service record while Turner called her another welfare queen playing soldier. "Because 15 years ago I took an oath," Rivera said quietly. "To serve and protect. Not to serve some people and protect the system. All people." Morrison's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake, son. A career-ending mistake. We've got 3 officers willing to testify that Sergeant Washington was combative, uncooperative, and posed a threat to public safety. 3 officers who are lying. That's not how the union will see it. That's not how the grand jury will see it." Morrison stood, pacing to the window that overlooked downtown Birmingham. "You file this report, you're not just going after Kowalski and Turner. You're going after the way we've always done business here. You're going after brotherhood, loyalty, the thin blue line." Rivera felt the weight of generations pressing down on him. His grandfather had been a cop in San Juan, back when speaking Spanish in uniform could cost you your job. His father had broken barriers in the NYPD, swallowing indignities to feed his family. Every Rivera man had learned the same lesson. Keep your head down, do your job, protect your own. But Maya wasn't his own. She was someone else's daughter, someone else's wife, someone else's future. She was every person who'd ever been failed by the system Rivera had sworn to uphold. "The FBI is already involved," Lieutenant Hayes said, consulting her notes. "Agent Patricia Williams contacted our department an hour ago. Seems Sergeant Washington's military record caught some attention in Washington. Bronze Star recipients don't disappear into booking without questions." Morrison whirled around. "What are you talking about?" "Sergeant Washington served 3 tours in Afghanistan. She's got commendations from generals, senators who know her name. When she missed her check-in with her husband, He didn't just call us. He called her commanding officer, who called the Pentagon, who called the FBI. Hayes smiled thinly. This isn't going away quietly, gentlemen. Rivera felt something shift in the room's atmosphere. The calculation was changing. This wasn't about one pregnant woman anymore. This was about federal scrutiny, media attention, political careers. So you see, Detective Rivera, Hayes continued, your report isn't the deciding factor here. It's simply confirmation of what higher authorities already suspect. Morrison slumped into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 60 years. Jesus Christ. 15 years from retirement. You still have a choice, Captain, Rivera said, surprising himself with his steady voice. You can stand with officers who bring shame to this badge, or you can stand with the oath we all took. Do you think Detective Rivera made the right choice? What would you have done in his position? Let us know in the comments. Morrison stared at Rivera for a long moment. In that silence, Rivera saw his own future splitting like a fork in the road. One path led to safety, conformity, and quiet complicity. The other led to uncertainty, but also to the possibility of looking his daughter in the eye without shame. There's something else, Rivera said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a small digital recorder. I've been documenting incidents for 6 months. Every racial slur, every excessive force complaint that got buried, every time we looked the other way because it was easier than fighting. Hayes and Morrison stared at the device as if it were a hand grenade. The Washington arrest was just the latest, but it was the one that made me realize I couldn't stay silent anymore. Rivera stood, his legs steady despite the earthquake in his chest. I'm filing the report. I'm cooperating with the FBI. And if this department tries to retaliate, that recorder and everything on it goes public. Morrison's face cycled through anger, disbelief, and something that might have been respect. You're destroying everything we've built here. No, sir. I'm trying to save what we were supposed to build in the first place. The door opened, and Agent Williams entered with 2 federal marshals. She was a tall black woman in her 40s, wearing a crisp FBI windbreaker and an expression that suggested she'd dealt with corrupt police departments before. Gentlemen, I'm here to escort Detective Rivera to a secure location. His statement has triggered a federal civil rights investigation. This facility is now under federal oversight pending our inquiry. Rivera looked back at Morrison one last time. The old man's empire was crumbling, but Rivera felt no satisfaction. Only the terrible, exhilarating weight of finally choosing courage over comfort. As they walked toward the exit, Agent Williams spoke quietly. Sergeant Washington wanted me to tell you something. She said to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. Rivera nodded, thinking of Maya somewhere safe, protected by federal agents, probably calling her husband to explain why she'd be late for dinner. Tomorrow would bring testimony, investigations, media attention, and career uncertainty. But tonight, he would go home to Carmen and Sophia with clean hands. The morning light streamed through the federal courthouse windows in Birmingham as Maya Washington adjusted her dress blues, her infant daughter sleeping peacefully in the carrier against her chest. 3 months had passed since that day at the station. 3 months since her life had been turned upside down and then rebuilt on a foundation of justice she never thought possible. Are you ready for this? James Rivera asked, straightening his own uniform. He wore the crisp blue of the FBI Academy. His new beginning, his redemption made manifest. Maya nodded, touching her Bronze Star Medal one more time. I've been ready since the day they put those handcuffs on me. The courthouse steps were lined with reporters and supporters. The civil rights case that had grown from that 20-minute arrest had become a landmark. Captain Morrison faced federal charges for civil rights violations. Officers Kowalski and Turner had been terminated and charged with assault. The entire Birmingham Police Department was under federal oversight. But more than the legal victory, Maya had found something she thought she'd lost forever: faith in the system's ability to change. Mrs. Washington, Federal Judge Patricia Williams called as they entered the courtroom for the final settlement hearing. Before we proceed with the civil settlement, I want to address the broader impact of your case. Maya stood, her daughter gurgling softly against her chest. Behind her, Marcus squeezed her free hand for support. Your Honor, when those officers arrested me that day, I thought about giving up. I thought about all the times I'd served this country, all the nights I'd stood guard in Afghanistan protecting American values, and I wondered if those values protected people who looked like me. Her voice grew stronger, carrying across the packed courtroom. But then I met Detective Rivera, now Agent Rivera, and I remembered that the system isn't just the bad actors. It's also the good people willing to risk everything to make it right. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right when it wasn't easy? Tell us about a time when courage made all the difference. James stepped forward, his voice steady but emotional. Your Honor, 3 months ago I was a coward hiding behind a badge. Maya Washington showed me what real courage looks like, not just facing down enemy fire in Afghanistan, but facing down injustice in your own hometown while carrying new life. He turned to face Maya directly. You saved my soul that day, Maya. When I watched those officers abuse their power against a pregnant veteran, I had to choose who I wanted to be. You gave me the strength to choose correctly. Judge Williams nodded solemnly. The settlement of $2.3 million reflects not just compensation for the violation of Mrs. Washington's civil rights, but acknowledgement that systemic change requires both accountability and investment in the communities harmed. As they exited the courthouse, Maya paused on the steps where protesters had once gathered, where her arrest had sparked a movement. Now, families of all colors mixed freely. Children played in the nearby park, and the Birmingham Police Department's new community liaisons, including several veterans James had recruited, worked alongside neighborhood leaders. You know what the crazy thing is? Maya said, adjusting baby Esperanza's blanket against the Alabama breeze. What's that? James replied, his wife Elena approaching with their own toddler in tow. That day, driving down I-20, I was worried about Marcus's job interview. I was worried about whether we'd fit in here, whether Birmingham was ready for us. She gazed out over the city skyline, where new construction cranes reached toward the sky, including the site of Marcus's first major project as the city's new head of infrastructure development. Now look at us. You're training the next generation of FBI agents in civil rights enforcement. Marcus is literally rebuilding this city. And this little one. Maya kissed her daughter's forehead. She'll grow up in a Birmingham that's fighting to be better. James nodded, remembering that moment in the station when everything changed. You know, my abuela used to say that sometimes God puts you exactly where you need to be, even when it feels like the worst place in the world. Smart woman. She would have loved you. James smiled. Always said the real heroes are the ones who keep fighting even when they're scared. As they walked toward their cars, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen back in Atlanta. Saw the news coverage. So proud of you. How's motherhood treating you? Maya looked down at baby Esperanza, whose eyes were beginning to open, dark and alert, already seeming to take in the world with curiosity rather than fear. Like I was meant for it, she texted back. Maya turned a moment of injustice into lasting change for her community. What positive change would you want to see in your hometown? Drop your ideas in the comments. You never know who might be inspired to take action. 6 months later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, her dress uniform crisp, her bronze star catching the stage lights. The keynote address for Veterans Day had been Marcus's idea, but standing here now, she understood it was always meant to be her story to tell. Service doesn't end when you take off the uniform, she began, her voice carrying to the back row where James sat with his FBI Academy graduating class. Sometimes the most important battles happen right here at home, in courtrooms and police stations, in schools and neighborhoods. She paused, thinking of that moment 7 months ago when Officer Kowalski's handcuffs had clicked into place, when she'd felt so alone and powerless. But here's what I learned: you're never fighting alone. Justice isn't just what happens in courtrooms. It's what happens when good people decide they won't be silent anymore. It's what happens when a detective chooses conscience over career, when a community chooses healing over hatred. In the audience, a young black woman in ROTC uniform raised her hand. "Ma'am, how do you keep faith when the system seems stacked against you?" Maya smiled, touching the medal at her chest one final time. "You remember that the system is made of people. And people can change. People can choose to do better. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up and say, 'This isn't right.' Sometimes that person is you. Sometimes it's someone you haven't met yet, someone who's been waiting for the courage to act." She looked out over the sea of young faces. Future soldiers, future police officers, future FBI agents, future citizens who would shape the world her daughter would inherit. "The badge and the belly," she said, echoing the phrase that had become shorthand for her case. One represented power without accountability. The other represented life worth protecting. In the end, life won. In the end, justice won. In the end, love won. As the applause thundered through the auditorium, Maya Washington, mother, veteran, survivor, changemaker, knew that some arrests lead not to endings, but to the most important beginnings of all. A story of courage, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. Sometimes the most important victories happen not on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when ordinary people choose to be extraordinary. Thanks for sticking with this story till the very end. But trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. The next story is crazier, more shocking, and will blow your mind. Click the image on your screen now and dive right in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single twist.